So Diane, I had a question for you. Being involved in so many different walks of life, being an author, being a singer, and then getting into voice acting, like at what age did you think, or did you discover that you wanted to be a certain thing, whether it was an actress or a singer? Like what age were you?
I looked in the mirror when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I decided I was going to be an actress, and that was the end of it. Everything in my life from there went toward that, and thank you, I was able to support myself as a living, breathing actor my entire life. So great, yeah.
As far as your vocation, what was the first thing that you did? Because, like, as far as the genesis between, again, being a singer, like on television, and being, you know, a romance novelist, like, what happened first?
Oh, well, I always sang. We sang at home. My father played the piano and I sang, and it was wonderful. So in college, high school, college, I was in the choir. I was a music minor. And my first job out of college, and some of you will not know this name, but some of you I hope will, I was a backup singer with Johnny Mathis.
Yeah.
And he was, yeah, okay. And for those of you who are of a different generation, he was a huge star for about 40 years, and he's still around. And so I was on the road as a backup singer, and that started my career, and I basically was a singer, backup, musicals, etc., and so forth for the next several years before I actually did discover voiceovers. And that's been my path, yeah.
Wonderful. Kevin, tell me about, give us a brief maybe introduction on what your first animation work was and then how that segued into Batman.
Oh. Well, the first animation job I got was for DIC back in like 1983, I think. And it was for this cartoon called Kid Video. Mm-hmm. And that's where I met this guy. Dan was hired, like, you know, for the second season of Kid Video. But that's where I got into animation. And then, of course, that's where I met Brad Rader, Mike Goguen, you know, John Calmette, all these people who ended up working on Batman eventually. And actually, I was the person that was kind of the catalyst to hire them. So we got the band back together for Batman, you know. And we had a lot of years working in the animation studios overseas were also the ones that we worked with at DIC on things like Real Ghostbusters. Yeah!
Yes!
Ghostbusters! Yeah, no, it's like Ghostbusters. Just all those shows that we did at Deke, you know, Cops was another one. And so like the animation people that we worked with, like Fukuda and Hirakawa, people that we worked with overseas in Japan ended up being the studios that also worked on Batman, Spectrum, people at TMS. That's kind of where it started, and brought that over into Batman.
So how early in the process of Batman did you get involved? Were you one of the first few that...
Yeah, I was one of the first. Absolutely. No, actually, I was the first director, but I remembered that for about a month there it was just me, Bruce, and Eric, and lighting, and Haven Alexander in a kind of a corridor that used to be like law offices. And we started on Leather Wings. Like the script was written before I was even hired. And I actually, for my interview, it was the very first time. Yeah, for the interview, I'm a real snob. Yeah, coming from Deke, you know, and I was actually at Disney. I was at Disney Features for a while doing a development for Lion King and Treasure Planet. So I was kind of an animation snob. I already was an animation snob, you know, because I was like, and then I heard that they were doing this Batman, and I was going, okay, Warner Brothers just did Tiny Toons, so they're going to do a Super Friends, right? And I go over there, and the first thing that Bruce does is he shows me that trailer that they did. And I was sold in an instant as soon as I saw the style and that they were doing Fleischer Superman, which is something that this guy and me studied while we were working together at Deke. We had these beat up VHS tapes that we just played over and over and over. It's like, how did Bulleteers, look, you know, how did they get that kind of movement going? And we would freeze frame it and try and figure it out. And Bruce was already doing that over at Warner Brothers, and we didn't even know. So anyhow, it was just kind of, again, another continuance. It was like just the Warner Brothers was doing a Fleischer Superman style Batman. I hate to say it, but if they didn't pay me, I would still be working there. I would have gotten the job as the janitor just so I could sneak in and correct things, you know.
Well, so Dan, sounds like you had a similar start to Kevin, so you want to talk about that and then where you jumped into the fray, Batman.
Yeah, my first gig was doing in-betweens for a Disney short that was done outside of Disney. And so I did that, and then I was at Ruby Spears, where Jack Kirby and Doug Wildey were doing work. And I got to hang out with Jack Kirby. It was a dream. And so it was amazing, yeah. And when I got the call from Kevin to work on the show, I had already seen that promo because it had already leaked in the industry. People already knew about it, and I happened to have a copy, a bootleg that had gotten around. So he's like, "There's this Batman." I'm like, "I know. Yeah. I want in.
It was like his hand came through the receiver of the phone and grabbed me by the throat.
And I had known Bruce a little bit because he was a Deke as well, working on Beanie and Cecil. So, and I used to stare at him draw because we all know what a brilliant artist he is. And it was just amazing to just watch him board. It was magical. It was really amazing. So, you know, it's just like, you'd be sitting there with a cigarette, drawing and doing zip-a-tone and stuff on his storyboards, and you just like, I'm like, you mind if I watch? He's like, yeah, knock yourself out, you know. And so then when Batman happened, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy, oh, he's brilliant, I know him. And so he, you know, saw my portfolio, which I had worked on what was it, Little Nemo before that, for TMS. After the movie, they were going to do a TV series, and so I was working on that for a year. Kevin did the first board for their promo, and then I was doing character designs, and Bruce saw those character designs. He went, "Oh, I need a character guy," and I was like, "Yeah, well, I wanted a board, so I got board artists. I want a character guy." So, okay, fine.
Yeah, and I was always saying to Bruce, you know, Dan has been directing over at Deke for about, 5 or 6 years, so he's actually quite a good director when they were looking for other directors. And then Bruce would say, I need a character guy.
And then when Dick Sebast up and left, they just, like, through Kevin and Ann, they convinced Bruce to let me, to give it a shot. And it was pretty cool.
And after Dan was off of my crew, they kept handing me that one lousy artist that needed help. And I'm like, thanks a lot.
Yeah, well,
I want Dan back.
And these guys are talking about the director of the actual cartoon. We also had a voice director, needless to say,
Yes.
Andrea Romano, who was past brilliant. I mean, seriously, it still is. So that's just information because they're talking about the technical stuff and I'm talking about the acting stuff. So that's okay because we got 3 of these brilliant guys here and it's all good.
Yeah, and there's so much to cover with so much talent.
And we can talk about the scripts and how much help we needed after a while.
Oh my God.
How this gentleman turned the show around for us.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to Alan because Alan, can you speak to what brought you into writing animation as opposed to some other form of writing, and then how you jumped into the Batman mythos?
Well, reading comic books like a crazy boy helped my career very much. But it goes like this. It goes film school, page at NBC, an internship within NBC's children's programs, where I met 2 people who were my boss there, Gene McCurdy and Margaret Lesh, who ended up being my boss for many years later at Hanna-Barbera and at Warner Brothers. Anyways, then I first started writing for Hanna-Barbera as almost like an internship program, but quickly became a staff writer. And I go back to Super Friends. I was the story editor on the last 2 years of Super Friends when they were trying to jazz it up. Super Friends was like, you go in and you say, oh, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make Super Friends actually a good show. And then you find out, oh, I need to, the show needs to be tailored to 2-year-olds. Seriously, because they didn't quite know where they were going to put Super Friends on the schedule, and if it's in the beginning of the schedule, you have to, you have rules for 2-year-olds. So I learned a lot on that show. And anyway, so then I went to Smurfs, and then I got tired of Hanna-Barbera limited animation. I went to Disney. I worked on Gummy Bears, and I became executive producer on DuckTales, and then I was tired of animation. I was tired of arguing with broadcast standards, and I wanted to sort of get out. And then Gene McCurdy, who was head of Warner Brothers Animation at the time, my former boss at NBC, knew my love for Batman. I had actually written the pilot for a Batman show in 1985 for ABC, which was too violent. And so Jean knew how much I loved Batman, and she knew I wanted to get out of the children's business. And the fact is, even though Batman was a show that was done under children's programs at Fox, it was a 3:30 show, I believe, in the afternoon. So we were up against Mannix and stuff like that, you know. So we had, and she had several lunches with me where I said, I'm not going to do the show unless I have guns and fistfights. And she said, you can do that, Alan. And I just did, after 10 years in children's programs, I did not believe her. And so it took like 2 or 3 lunches, and I saw that trailer that Bruce and Eric had done, and that convinced me to come over, and I came over. And so, I was at Warner Brothers from then on. The last show I did for Warner Brothers was something called Justice League Action. I only mention it in that it was the kind of Super Friends show that I wanted to do in the beginning, and I did get a chance to finally do that kind of show. But that's me in a nutshell.
Alan actually did the Batman origin for Super Friends. If any of you saw it, it was amazing, because I think I was in college when that came out. but he actually got away with it, like on a network which was no guns and no deaths, and yet you knew what you were watching. You could tell that Bruce Wayne's parents are getting shot, even though there was no gunshot. And it was amazing, and I was impressed with that. And now we're working together, and it was really cool.
That was the Batman pilot that ABC rejected, but we retooled it for a Super Friends show, and it was called The Fear. And we, instead of gunshots, we went to lightning in the sky, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it worked, because you see the thug with his gun in his pocket, but you never see the gun, right. But it's in his pocket, the classic.
So the first time the story of Bruce's parents getting killed, it was done on Saturday morning, strangely enough. So.
You know, what's fascinating, I'm listening to all of this, and we did this show 30 years ago, right? And at that time, it was basically aimed at children and adults. So there was something for children in all of the episodes, but there was also something for adults. So the adults and the children watched the first, years. And then those children grew up, and then they had children. So we have now lasted and been seen by 3 generations. And just as, that's kind of cool, guys, and it's amazing. It's called having legs in show business. And it's simply astonishing that it's still relevant. It's still important. We've, of course, lost our darling Kevin Conway, and we've lost Harleen Sorkin, the original Harley Quinn, and Richard Mall, and because 30 years have passed since we did it, so people get older and people die, But we're still here, right, guys?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say that.
And I can still draw.
Yes, he can. Diane, I thought we'd bring it back around to you and talk about briefly how you got the job for Poison Ivy.
I love this story.
And then after that, maybe you can relate the story you told me the other night about how so much time had passed, and then.
Oh, that?
Yeah. And then the discovery that you had adoring fans.
Dork. Yeah, right. Okay. So, first of all, I had started doing cartoons for Filmation. I did Flash Gordon, and I did She-Ra, and I did Mighty Mouse. I was pure-hearted Mighty Mouse. You know, there's that kind of thing. And I had started doing cartoons, and I'd done a couple for Andrea, and I was on the show called Pretty Poison. I was hired that day to do what they call incidental voices, a secretary, a cop, or whatever. And the actress that they had decided to do Poison Ivy didn't work out. I'm not going to go into any details. I happen to know the story, but it's no one's business. Okay. And Andrea came up to me and said, would you like to audition for this? And I said, sure, because you always said sure. I didn't even know what they were talking about, but that was okay. She showed me the cell of Poison Ivy, and I said, okay, sexy voice. I'd done a lot of cosmetic commercials at that point in time, and lingerie commercials, and I had that voice. I knew that one. But she was also a PhD, so she was very smart. So you add just a little edge to that voice, just a little brain at work to that voice. I auditioned, and I got the job, and that's how I got to be Poison Ivy. It's just one of those serendipity things. You know, which is wonderful. And then you want me to talk about...
Yes, so then time passes and what happens?
Let me just be very clear and not, I hope, to upset anybody, but I don't do cartoons. I never collected comics. I don't watch cartoons. I'm one of those ridiculous people that likes to go to foreign films with subtitles. Okay? And I'm sort of, I'm not even a snob about cartoons. It just wasn't in my universe. So I did the job for 9 years, which was delightful. And I got a paycheck, and I had the best time recording those. Oh my God. And I was only one of many wonderful villains, so I wasn't on every show. I was just whenever they wanted a Poison Ivy show. And then, of course, Harley and I took off and all that. Okay. So 8 years ago, someone told me that I had a fan base. And I said, what's a fan base? And my daughter was a librarian, and they were doing some kind of little Comicon fundraiser thing up in San Jose, and Mom, would you come up and sign a few autographs? And I said, sure. I mean, okay, fine. About Poison Ivy. And I go up there, and there's a line around the block for my autograph. And I said, why? And they said, because Batman, it's still on TV. And I said, is it? This is serious. And that was like 8.5 years ago. And somebody told me I had a fan base, and somebody I should call Celebworks, which is the management company that now manages me. And I called the phone number, and I said, hi, this is Diane Pershing. And Chris, one of the managers, said, Diane Pershing? Poison Ivy? And I said, yes. And he said, you want representation? And I said, yeah, sure, thanks. And so my 7th career started of going to Comic-Cons, signing autographs. Oh my God. Meeting these amazing fans, seeing these astonishing cosplayers, hearing stories about how my character affected other people in their childhood. I've heard stories of abuse. I've heard stories about latchkey kids. I've had stories about my character changed people's lives. And when you're an actor and you're a voice actor and you speak into a microphone, you have no idea what effect it's having. You don't, you can't, you have no feedback. It's not like being on a stage and getting applause. And to hear these things for the last 8 years that I've been doing this, and hearing people come up and say, you were my childhood, you don't know how you changed my life. I mean, really, it could go to my head if I was a very egotistical person, which I'm not. But honestly, what an impact this has had. as I get older and watch others drop, and thank God I'm still healthy and I'll be doing this. Neary, one of my managers, said I'll be doing this while I'm in an iron lung. Okay? So anyway, that's the two stories that James wanted you to know. So thank you.
I loved that story at dinner the other night, and I thought that the crowd should hear that.
Well, the kick is that not only do I see people who like the show, who were born after the show was made, but I'm seeing their children. I'm seeing children and grandchildren, people who have been, it's been 20 years and they're still fans of the show. It's just remarkable, and please do come by and see us.
Yeah, we're across from the lightsabers.
Yes.
We are, and what is it?
2822.
Well, I know, but it's hard to find.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
signs.
Anyway.
They were in front of the men's bathroom.
Very helpful.
This is the first time we've tried this joint endeavor with Celebworks, with the company Diane's with, and I love those kids. Like I said, they were just getting started, and now they must represent 200 or 300 clients. But I know. Anyway, the way that we engaged with each other in the past, I thought let's give this a try. So thank you for coming, Diane.
It's been amazing, and the barbecue, you guys. I mean, I have had barbecue for dinner one night, lunch yesterday, dinner last night. My stomach is going, do you have to eat all this meat? Yes.
We could go on for hours. The issue is that you guys may have some questions. Can you let me know if you have some? Do you guys have some questions you want to ask? Let's get a little louder. Do you guys have some questions you want to ask? Let's open the floor.
Yes.
Again, what's great is you have voice talent, we have artistic talent of all types. We've got artists, storyboard artists, directors. We have Alan could handle writing and production questions. So let's open the floor. Please go ahead and get close to the microphone so they can hear you. Go ahead.
I've been watching Batman the Animated Series since I was 3 years old, and so I couldn't help but notice that in the epilogue to Justice League Unlimited, that not only had the character of Andrea Beaumont returned, but the ending scene was the callback to the first scene from On Leather Wings.
Yes.
I just wanted to know, when was it decided that we'd end Terry McGinnis' story where we entered with Bruce's?
Well, that was in the script, but Bruce was very adamant that we use the exact same shot that introduced Man-Bat's shadow across Gotham, so that the echo was there from that first shot. And Kevin Conroy had the same line, because he played the blimp pilot who sees the thing on the radar. What's that flashing? Whatever.
Wasn't Ephraim the voice of the other guy in the blimp, I think?
What's that?
I could be wrong. I think the Ephraim who did Alfred in the anime, I think he was the other guy in the blimp. I could be remembering
No,
wrong.
no.
Bob Hastings.
Bob Hastings, and but Kevin did the first line. And so when he saw that in the script and we were at the record, he started laughing because he knew exactly what we were doing. Because the script didn't actually say that what we were doing. We did it in the board, but he got it immediately when he saw the line, and it was really cool. It was really fun.
Thanks.
Let's go for it.
This is for kind of everyone, but what was the energy like, or after shooting Heart of Ice and getting the Emmy nomination for that episode for the first season?
The energy.
For Heart of Ice? Well, neither Dan or I worked on that because we were doing On Leather Wings and Two-Face and Catwoman at the same time. It says they were doing Heart of Ice.
Right.
That was Bruce.
That was Bruce, yeah.
Was there, I think part of the question might be though, was there a buzz around the
of
office
course.
that you felt like you were actually doing something when you started receiving Emmy nominations?
Well,
Oh, sure.
well, here, we'll go and say that.
Or you said, we know that. We know we should be nominated
See,
for Emmys.
there was that energy in the office of like, well, just wait till the fans see this. Except I'm just blind to it. I'm just focused. Like, this is really a lot of work, and it's like I'm as big a fanboy as anybody on the planet ever. Like when I was like 11 years old and the first comic conventions happened, I'd be like weeping at home because I couldn't afford to travel to New York to go to a comic convention. They were like wonderful things for me. So by the time I'm doing animation and by the time I'm doing the show on Leather Wings specifically, I'm just so focused, this has got to be good. And I'm just like, and I'm getting like bad layouts and stuff. And Dan here, he knew. It's like, I'm oblivious. It's like, the first time that I was at a convention and they showed on Leather Wings, I was astonished at the audience reaction. Like when Batman's face hits the window of the Zeppelin, it's right below us, and then wham! It's like the audience jumped out of their seats and I went, oh, I have power. Anyway, it's like, it was fantastic, but I was unaware of it. Dan was telling me
all along. I knew it. I knew the show was going to be big. And I knew it would last because I'd worked with Doug Wildey at Ruby Spears, and he had created Johnny Quest. And I knew what an impact that had on my childhood and how important that was to me. And I knew our show was going to have that kind of quality. We knew the people behind the scenes who were animating. We knew what was, even before we saw the pilot, the trailer was so good. It's like, even if it's half as good as this, it'll blow people's minds. It'll just be the best thing ever.
And I'll say one thing about Alan Burnett, too. That's like where things happen. Mitch Bryan wrote the first Local Boy, Mitch. He wrote the pilot that I read on Leather Wings, and I thought, this is great. It's got a werewolf transformation basically in it, and I'm drawing that. And, it was just a wonderful script. And then we didn't get very good scripts. We just kept getting these scripts that were like leaning towards the kids show, leaning towards Saturday morning, trying to soften things up a bit. And then they told me, we're getting a new story editor. Oh, okay, where's this guy come from? Well, he was at Hanna-Barbera, and I'm like, okay, what did he do over there? Well, Super Friends. So I've got attitude, and the script shows up, Two-Face, Part 1. And it was absolutely the best script I had ever read coming into animation. It was the best script I'd read in ever since I started at Deke. And it was like, thank God for Alan Burnett.
No, it's true. He saved us.
Yeah, Alan really did.
He really did.
You ask about the Emmys. Superhero shows have a hard time in the Emmys. We had a hard time in the Emmys. So it was always a comedy show that won. In fact, I think our show is responsible for a split in the Academy. They suddenly had young shows and then
special class.
Special class.
Yeah.
And so we got that. And then we were nominated also. We won. I think the first time the show really won was Prime Time.
Yep.
And this was, we were up against 60 Minutes for about half a year.
Yeah.
And
nobody was watching.
we were nominated, and we won because, you want to say it?
No, go, you say it.
The Simpsons decided we're not an animation show, we're a sitcom. So they took themselves out of the running. And we all were smiling around the studio. And I think we thanked them at the Academy, and sincerely. I mean, we were so grateful to finally win one of these things. So.
But that was Robin's Reckoning that won that, right?
Robin's Reckonings,
yeah. Which is I didn't work on it except that I got to edit the show, so I came in late. Dick Sebastian left, so I got to sit in the editing room with the editors and cut the show. And so I was like, I feel ownership.
Yeah. What made me angry about my position at Warner Brothers is I'd be sitting there, and I remember Randy Rogel came into the office all excited, and he's like, "I'm doing the origin of Robin." And it's like, he describes it to me, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be great. Yeah, he said, I want you to do it. Dick Sebas gets the show. I'm like, oh man, what do I get? And I get like, well, this one has this trouble here, and we got to fix this, so you'd be really good for this one. It's like, there's a lot of things you have to work on to make this sell. And that would keep happening. Paul Dini would come in and say, you know what? Remember Cesar Romero in the 60s? He always had a moll. There was always a girl in the gang going, gee, Joker. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I'm going to give Joker a girlfriend. And I'm thinking, oh boy, I'm going to get to do this. And then Dan.
No, Boyd.
Yeah, Boyd got that show. And I'm like, God. And I have to apologize to Dan because that kept happening. And I loved Harley. I loved her so much. I thought it was such a great character. And then Paul does it to me again. He comes in the office and says, Joker steals an A-bomb. And so Batman gets Harley out of jail to help him, rescue the city and apprehend the Joker. And I'm like, oh my God, that's great. And he says, yeah, you'd be perfect. It's got aircraft in it and everything. Very shortly after that, I hear the script being talked about in the office next door because I left the door open. And Dan's getting the script for Harlequinade. And I actually got out of my chair, walked in, and I grabbed the script and said, sorry, Dan, this one's mine.
In case you can't tell, there are as many emotions and passions among the gentlemen and the creators with any female in the planet. They care. They really care.
It's I got to do trials, so I got to do everybody. I got to work with you finally.
Yes, you did.
Harley and everybody. So that was my consolation prize.
And I only got to work with Diane, just once, but it was Eternal Youth.
Yeah, that's
which
right. That was
I
fun.
thought was so great because she's a scientist. She has this big plot to get to really affect the planet and get rid of the people who are spending money on destroying the forests. So it's such a great character that,
I love that character because she really thought she was right, and she was. She was trying to save the planet. Yes, she had to kill a few people along the way.
But they deserved it.
That they did, and also every villain thinks they're right. That's how you play a villain. You don't play a villain as a villain. You play a villain as somebody who is absolutely positive that they are on the right path because they firmly believe what they believe. And that's the secret to any villain in drama, which is wonderful, wonderful to play.
Okay, let's see if we can squeeze in a few more. Go ahead.
Hello. Where or what was the strangest place or circumstance that you saw or came across Batman the Animated Series or the DC Animated Universe in general? Not at a place like this, could be out in the streets, in another country, in pop culture, etc.
Place that we know that the show is on the screen and watched or whatever.
Well, I just tell you, one thing comes to mind is that when the movie came out, it was in the theaters for a week. Nobody was paying attention. Fine. It became a video, and it's fine. It did well, and people like it today. I'm talking about Mask of the Phantasm, But about a year later, I get a call. I'm on vacation. I get a call from Gene McCready, my boss, saying, Siskel and Ebert, they loved it. And they had finally reviewed it, and they apologized for not reviewing it when it was in the theaters. And that was one cultural moment for me on that show. Yeah, they both agreed on it, so they liked it. So,
but the oddest thing, I remember Alan reading a report and telling us that the show was very popular in prisons.
Yeah, it was popular with 2-year-olds too, because if you remember the show, it was a quiet show. Sometimes there would be no sound. I mean, he'd be walking through the cave and it would go to nothing. And it had the rich music and this track, and it had rich colors because it was all painted against black, and the little kids liked the show for that reason.
I just loved the sort of Germanic feel of the darkness of the show, the serious, the art of it. I was blown away when I watched it on television. I thought, my God, did I did I play a part in that? This brilliant, brilliant thing? So you guys, wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question. I think we can squeeze in one more. This may be it. It better be a good one.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about this show being multi-generational. I watched this with my father. This was our thing, was watching Batman together. And my favorite episode was Almost Got Him, and his was It's Never Too Late. Do your families have favorite episodes?
To our family.
Anyone? So yeah.
Anyone do our,
in-
oh,
Yes.
I have this wonderful story, and I'll make it quick because you guys might have some comments, but I had my granddaughter, she was 5 or 6 at the time, and I say, honey, would you like to see what Grandma did for a living? And would you like to see it? And I think I did Pretty Poison for her, so she watched it. And she looked up and she said, Grandma, she's not very nice, is she? And I said, no, and I loved playing her.
My family? Yeah, no, my personal family, like, I'm doing this cartoon, and it's like, the attitude is like, my dad was just very proud of me, you know?
Yeah.
But most of the family was like, don't watch cartoons. You know, all of my relatives. But now the weird thing is like, after all these years, my cousins who have had grandchildren, kids, you know, they're all like, the rare times that I get to go back east and I get to visit with family, they actually show up at conventions and stuff. And it's like, and they've got all these kids, and they're like, they say, this is your cousin. That's all I get. Anyway. And they're big fans too.
And I remember visiting relatives in Argentina, and I brought the Batman animated book because I'm in it, and I'm like, okay, so I'm handing it out to some relatives, and the kids went nuts because apparently it was huge down there as well. So that was really gratifying. But I don't know which episode.
All right, we're on a hard break. Sorry guys, I told you we could go for hours.